So with our next speaker, Shruti Karat from M&S Consulting will be presenting an Oracle Analytics project-driven use case or case study around engineering and construction. This will really cover the client who had a number of different disparate reporting solutions, and how that being said, the engineering and construction firm utilizes many different business processes and needs to extend their extensive database projects to really sell and implement and manage that much further. So Shruti, over to you to lead this discussion.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, I'm hoping you can all see my screen.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, good morning, everyone. Glad you're with us here today. My name is Shruti Karat. I'm an Oracle practice leader at M&S Consulting. I've worked extensively with Oracle EBS, actually, and also ventured into the middleware analytics side of things, including SOA and, of course, Oracle Analytics Cloud. So my perspective is going to be a mix of technical and functional. So my hope is to give you a few items to consider as you may undertake similar projects in your organization. And so before I get started, I just want to point out that I am on planet Hoth from Star Wars. It's not what I had planned, but this morning it felt right after the past few days. I'm up in Pittsburgh and we are pretty buried. Probably not as much. I mean, I feel like everyone has a story to tell, but it just felt right. So that's where I am right now. All right. So to get started here, this is our agenda for today, just to talk you through. So there's a little bit more of an introduction of me, M&S. I'll present the use case, talk a little bit about project-driven organizations, what the project goals were, Oracle Analytics Cloud, and how we came about choosing that. Some few key considerations, I think, in projects such as these, and then just summary and questions. So getting started here, just again, like I said, I'm from M&S Consulting. We were established in 2002, and we have partnerships with several different companies, including Oracle, Salesforce. We are technology agnostic, so we have expertise in a variety of fields, and definitely deep expertise in functional and technical roles within the Oracle ecosystem. All right, so let me talk to you a little bit about the use case. So the client was an engineering and construction firm, and the reporting portfolio had essentially several reporting solutions, which is, again, similar to a lot of companies, right? Definitely lots of Excel magic happening in addition to pulling reports from various sources. They had Oracle EBS was their ERP, and their business was segmented by regions, practices, and markets. And again, their organization structure was pretty specific in that sense. They also utilized project accounting very heavily, which is sort of why I added, like, that's part of the title of this presentation as well. So just before we go too far into the other aspects of the presentation, I just wanted to start with laying a little bit of a groundwork, in case some folks might not be as familiar, is just project-driven organizations. What do I mean when I say that? Essentially, there's a very heavy focus on staffing, costing, billing, and revenue from a project perspective. So it's almost as it's projects drive every key measure. And so the revenue and cost from a project would roll up into the company financials. And then again, company financials will drill down to the project level. So depending on your role in the company, you would want a summarized view or a detailed view by project. Similar to a lot of other Organizations as definitely focus on forecasting, the budget versus actual and projected on a project level, and then again as you roll up on a company and organization level as well. There's typically a heavy emphasis on resources, labor, and overhead cost. So essentially resource management, making sure that they have the people to perform on the projects, and then that they have sufficient backlog of projects to make sure that all their employees are optimally utilized. So that's important. And then in general, like I mentioned, the drill down and roll up is very key part of their business assessment, and in terms of assessing their strategy. And that's really how they look into and understanding variances and where things might be off from what they had originally projected. So again, I think it comes back to a lot of organizations might recognize a lot of these pieces, but again, it's just sort of focused on projects a lot, and because everything ties back to it, there are certain data challenges. So that's just what I wanted to call out. All right, so let me give you a brief overview of what goals we were trying to achieve through this project. First thing is to consolidate reporting solutions. Again, like I said, they had several. So they had Power BI, and then they used the standard Oracle reporting as well. And then, of course, there were definitely people who were putting together all of these reports into their own Excel version of things, and then, sort of having that information. It's almost like they were their own reporting solution, right? So there was a lot of that going on. They also wanted an enterprise level solution, again, to sort of formalize some of these processes so that people were able to trust the data and look at these numbers and understand where it's coming from. One of the key things is, again, if users are sort of manipulating data from different sources, it starts, there's a general question that comes as to where is this coming from, right? So something that was an enterprise level solution. They wanted a consistent view across the, a consistent data view. So this is sort of an extension of the consolidation of reporting solution, but in organizations with scattered reporting, oftentimes the numbers will look different depending on who is running the report and who's sourcing it. So what I mean by that is, in project organizations, you can look at the data from a headcount perspective, you can look at it from a project perspective, and that can significantly change the metrics. So it was important for them to have at least a common understanding of when I'm looking at something, what is the question that was asked. I'll touch more on this in my later slides. And then they wanted the reporting to be driven by business segments. The organization structure is, like I mentioned, laid out by region, practice, and markets. So it was, it's often tedious. It was tedious to take the raw data and then split it for different folks in different ways. So if they sort of wanted the basis of their reporting to be driven by that aspect of their, the way they segmented their business. So let me tell you a few things about Oracle Analytics Cloud and why they chose it. Again, I'm not going into details of all the features, but these were just the things that appeal to them. Like I mentioned, enterprise level solution, single source of truth for the important enterprise data. Again, they also had Oracle EBS, so they're within the Oracle ecosystem, and using the cloud. This seemed like a good next step for them. They wanted to be able to do that. It allowed the users to leverage the functionality that they needed. So I have a few terms here listed. There's the descriptive analytics. This is the general reporting that we typically do, right? It tells you, it describes what has happened. It's the numbers. But this allowed them also to look into other aspects of analytics, including predictive analytics. OAC has a lot of good functions that you can leverage to do many different types of statistical modeling. And again, it allows them to explore those potential approaches rather than the just simple formula based projections that they were used to doing. So it allowed them that room for growth. And then, of course, more proactive analytics in terms of being able to use the data and see what might happen as well. Govern self-service capabilities, and this comes back as well to the fact that using data visualization, it was important for them to be able to again build reports on their own and build different visualizations just on their own. User-driven what-if modeling. And then I think this next one was very key, is the ability to combine new data sets with the enterprise use cases. So again, in situations where they had data in the form of reports from other places, even if it was not a source that was actively being used by OAC, those were items that they were able to upload and join with the data that they were getting from their ERP system. So that made a lot of the, I think, ad hoc reporting and looking into things, much better. So I think that's a powerful capability. They were also able to build field reports by quickly summarizing by region or market, like I said, because their business is segmented specifically. Using that to build the OAC data models help them able to do these other pieces pretty quickly. And then, yes, the ability to drill down to projects and also roll up to the organization level. So a few key considerations is something that I wanted to present. So in this section, I'm going to go over a few key points that I think would be good to consider as you undertake a journey such as this in your organization. It's a combination of our project approach combined with learnings. So it's sort of a mixture of both. So the first thing I want to talk about is the data sets itself, right? So when we, if you remember, one of our project goals was to essentially essentially replace some of their other reporting tools. So the way we went about it was to, again, start with a high-level requirement gathering where we identified all the stakeholders and reports that needed to be consolidated, identified the current pain points, and then scoped out what the requirements would be. We followed this up with a more, targeted deep dive sessions by department to understand how they used reporting. And I think this was key because it helped us understand what are the decisions that they're making using the data. What are the questions that they were looking to have answered? And then what is the analysis that they performed and how did they split the business segments? Again, we often found that it was not always, everyone had a slightly different way of doing things. So it was important for us to gather that so that we could come up with the next steps in the process. We also performed, along with the business, again, a round of report rationalization. This is to make sure that we were prioritizing and rationalizing all the reports that were used so that we could remove duplicates and then create the base set could be a comprehensive set of reports that the users could use. Again, knowing that there is ability for the users to build their own reports, it's a good way to identify what to get started on. So the data models that we had focused on was essentially data that was associated with the revenue, project costs, labor, utilization, and then project details. And again, because all of these tie together to work to present data in the way that they found most accessible and that answered all of their questions around this. So you'll notice that there are other aspects. So there's sales, there's project management, there's other items as well, but we were really focused on the financial side of things at this point. But those are other items that I would say should also be part of your plan as you undertake projects like this. The next important thing was the data definition. So it was important for us to standardize the definitions and formula. Um, Again, so in project, driven organizations like this, like I mentioned earlier, you can look at things from a headcount perspective, so employees, and you can look at it from a project perspective. So, for example, if a project is in Pittsburgh, but has employees from, say, Chicago working on it, from a headcount perspective, the Chicago location is the one that has data associated, but from a project perspective, it would be Pittsburgh. So so understanding that on a conceptual level versus having a common understanding of which view to look at depending on the question being asked was key. So there were a lot of terms that were used within the business interchangeably, and again, as the different business segments work together, that's often what caused some confusion even amongst the leaders that were looking at the data. And again, that's what starts causing some distrust in the data. It's just that people are looking at it differently. It's not necessarily a right number versus a wrong number. So so I think that this was key to try and understand, to standardize the terminology within the organization as well. I just want to call out that these are some things that, again, this is all about progress, not perfection, right? These are times where we found that it was a good chance for the business to really look at what they wanted from their data and then help and then work on some processes so that they could get the most out of their analytics projects, really. So, and then also work on identifying the source of truth for the data. So, for example, like I mentioned earlier, when you look at a particular number, knowing which system or which area that data was coming from was important. So that was an important exercise that we did. Data quality, of course, as you can imagine, the data quality assessment, at least on a high level, I think was very important, because the data you see is the data you have. And I think, so as part of analytics, there is a lot of room for forgiveness, in the sense that, okay, it is trying to catch trends and patterns, and there is definitely room for that. But in terms of business operations, the way that the business wanted to look at the data, it makes sense that as you're going through this, to sort of look at the data quality and make sure that the old data is cleaned up, again, so that we're not looking at or pulling data that we don't really need, and also coming up with a process to maintain that data in the future. I think it's just sort of an opportunity to again, make sure that we are focusing on what really matters. The business segments. So I suspect, again, that all organizations have some way in which they would like to break up the data and the hierarchies that go along with it. We found that even that these regions hierarchies, that they had, were actually not even within the system. So there were Excel sheets and different ways in which everyone sort of captured it, and then took reports to sort of enrich them with this data. So having a way to formalize these pieces, I think, was important, so that we could consistently drill down into the details and, again, have a consistent view that everyone could look at. So again, we wanted to make sure that the data utilized the segment. And this way, what we were able to do is, since the hierarchies were defined, be able to give the users an option to view by these different segments. So this touches on the fact that what we were trying to do, and the initial step, is to identify a core set of rationalized and prioritized reports. These are reports that are that are used by the business regularly, and answer or sort of merge together a lot of the data sets that they consistently look at. The goal was not to build every one-off report. Again, we wanted to give them the ability to have those pieces and then be able to perform their analysis on their own as well, right? So that way we would be giving them the ability to look into the data further. And then yes, so the comprehensive reports were to help with the analysis and identifying the trends, and then being able to take that data and dig in further to investigate different aspects, whether it's an issue or to understand what decision needs to come next. So not just built to be transactional reporting. Reports that will facilitate decision making and identifying issues. All right. Another thing that I think was helpful, but the key is the balance here, is that we used Agile sprints to sort of work through the report list by identifying the key requirements and working with the stakeholders. Now, it's very important to have a clear understanding of expectation and scope. Again, the idea is not to go through infinite iterations, but I think that what it does do is working through development in this way, we found gave the users a visibility into features and possibilities that they didn't quite know about, right? Because this is a brand new tool to them. And a lot of times in the requirements, it's sort of a chicken and the egg versus they have something in their mind, but they might not know the possibilities until they know the possibilities. So, but having a good understanding of how, time boxing that and making sure that, in a certain specific amount of time, we would be working through the requirements and making sure that we're giving them a good product. I think that was helpful even from a user perspective. The last thing I'm going to touch on is the user training. So again, focus on analytics for business. It's a different approach within the organization. So there's definitely a learning curve to it in sort of changing, because it's not just a matter of the tool, but it's also about the adoption of the tool and using it to its best capabilities. And so a lot of the features of OAC and data visualization, I think it was key to have a good amount of user training to help them understand the features, but also tie it back to the reports that they already had, coming back to the core business reporting they had, the data definition and that process that was also put in place. So to make sure that when they are now building new reports or they're performing an analysis, they stayed true to those original definitions that were there, and essentially, I'm sorry. Essentially making sure that it ties together what reporting is already out there, as they are building their new data sets. So in summary, I know that I think I'm just almost at time here. It's a powerful tool with enterprise level capabilities, and definitely project driven organizations have a unique set of data challenges, like I mentioned. But I think that having a data driven focus within the organization definitely goes a long way in helping with user adoption, because again, it's definitely more than just the technical aspects of building and implementing an analytics solution. So those were some key considerations from my side. I think I'm actually exactly at time. So any questions for me?
Well, thanks.
Yep. Well, I think we just have one quick question that we can get answered. For Shruti, do you use Jira or other tools when doing data analytic projects?
Yes, we do use Jira when doing these kind of projects. It helps to again, we follow that methodology. So we write out stories talking about how folks are using the report. Like I mentioned, what are the questions they're looking to answer? What are the decisions that they're trying to make? Because a lot of times we found that it's not even, especially when if they have current reporting tools that we're trying to replace, The thought is that they want us to recreate exactly that report that they download and then do 10 other steps to get to their actual data set. So I found that writing out those requirements from that perspective, what is the final product they're looking for, helps us through that. And yes, we do use Jira heavily to go through that sort of agile process.
Awesome. Thank you, Shruti.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, thank you so much for such a great presentation. And if there are any follow-up questions, please ask them in the Q&A, and Shruti will be online to help answer as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.